So then if we look for the other sacraments, let's look for ordination. Ordination to priesthood you won't find in terms of a Christian understanding in the scriptures. It does use scriptural references, but all of those scriptural references are Hebrew, or they're from the letter to the Hebrews. What is important to understand is in the very earliest centuries of the church, they moved away from priesthood and altars and sacrifices, because priesthoods, altars and sacrifices were all associated with either animal or human sacrifice or with emperor worship. And they didn't want to be associated with that in any way. Therefore, they developed the home churches or the house churches, where the meal was central, which we would now call the meal of the Eucharist. However, after about 200, 250 years, there develops a thing called the monarchical priesthood, which is very similar to what we have today. And so different orders come into existence. So the order of bishops, the episcopos, they're basically there as the managers to make sure the thing keeps working and to keep checking the funds. The presbyters, presbyteroi, who later become the priests, are the people who lead the community in their worship. And so their job is to pray and to read and to think. And then you have the deacons, diakonoi, who are the third of these three orders. And they are there to ensure that those who are poor and in need are being looked after. That the command within the scriptures to care for the needy, the orphan and the widow, which is taken in the early church as an absolute command of Christ, that is actually done. Now, that evolution, of course, is the evolution of an urban church, where you have one bishop, several presbyters, multiple deacons. And so it's a management role for what we now call the bishop. The giving of the Spirit we find also in the origin of the scriptures. You'll remember that at the time of Genesis, the story is told that the Spirit passes over the water, and the Spirit's passing over the water brings life to the water, and then the waters recede. And so that is a very clear image of the Spirit and the maternity of God, because later that will be picked up in the story of the Annunciation to the Virgin, when the Virgin then says, Mary says to the angel Gabriel, how can this happen since I'm a virgin, I don't know a man, I haven't had sex with anyone? And the angel says, the Spirit of the Most High will cover you with its shadow, and so the child will be holy and therefore of God. So the covering with the shadow is an ancient metaphor for having sexual intercourse, so that the shadow of the man covers the woman. We'd call it the missionary position. The fact is that the Spirit covers the Virgin with its shadow, but that Spirit that passed over the waters with its shadow passes over the Virgin with its shadow. So therefore we begin to understand that the Spirit of God, so God the Father, the Creator, God the Son, and God the Spirit, begin then to show themselves as a unity for us. So we can actually talk about Trinity, but we won't. And then we come then into the New Testament, and we have the giving of the Spirit at Pentecost. We have also then, when applied to the sacrament of baptism and applied to the sacraments, we have the Spirit being experienced in different ways as recorded in the Acts of the Apostles. So for some, the Spirit is given and they become members of the church. For others, the Spirit comes after water baptism. For some, it comes before water baptism. So what it does then is it says that the early church understands that the giving and the receiving of the Spirit is integral to the initiation of somebody into the church. If you want to look at marriage, then you would say that within marriage there are instances where people are given and received in marriage. that there is an openness there to that in the scriptures. But in terms of Christian marriage as it is particularly understood today, you won't find a very strong scriptural reference. You'll find several that allude to it, but nothing that says, here on this day Jesus instituted Christian marriage, because Christian marriage became a sacrament only in 1170. If you look at the sacrament of the sick, then again you won't find a moment where Jesus says, okay guys, we're going to have the sacrament of the sick, I'll bless some oil, say these words, and you guys go out and anoint everyone. No. However, in the letter of James, you will find a text that says, if a person is ill or sick, they are to send for the elders of the church, or presbyter, now priest I suppose, to send for the elders of the church. The elder is to pray over the sick person, anoint them with oil, and that prayer will save the sick one. So we can look at that text and we can use it. However, if we want to go back to the life of Christ, it's much easier to see. Here is somebody who heals the sick. You know, the woman who came with the flow of blood and touched the hem of his garment, healed. The demoniac, healed. Peter's mother-in-law, healed. So it's very easy with that sacrament to turn around and say that Jesus Christ was a healer and that he had a whole ministry that allows us to see that. Therefore we can begin from not that he instituted a sacrament, but that he did sacramental things.